Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. A very good morning. मतलब आप इसको रात को भी देख रहे हैं तो don't worry. We are recording this podcast in the morning. That's the reason. Good morning. Joining me today in conversation is Dr. R.Balasubramaniam, popularly known as Dr. Balu. He has come up with a new book, Power Within: The Leadership Legacy of Narendra Modi. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me here.
We were having a very quick chit chat about your past journey, about your past life. Would you mind just giving us a précis again? What exactly was your life before? Because it will be intriguing for a lot of people कि इंसान कितने अलग चीजें करने के बाद कहाँ पहुँच सकता है. You were a trained physician. You worked in the forest, in the woods for a good 30 years. You have worked as a environmental activist, as a social reformer, and now with the government of India. Yeah. Now you.
I've had a fun-filled past, if you can call it that. At 19, as a medical student, inspired by the nation-building message of Swami Vivekananda, I started the Vivekananda Youth Movement, which is now a 40-year-old organization. Works across the state of Karnataka today. It started its work in tribal population because that's where I lived, and touches the lives of 3 million people today. Wow. We have centers in the US, UK, and it's a huge organization. 12 or 13 years ago, I started another policy think tank. Again, the reason was I felt that policy is somehow believed to be emanating from Delhi, and where the voice of the citizen is usually ignored, or people think they know what the citizens want. So to articulate these voices on the ground, from the grassroots, I thought we need an organized mechanism, capturing it and presenting it to people who matter.
Okay.
So it's been a different world that I was living in.
And how do you do that? Like you talk to people from...
We do actual very validated research on the ground, participatory research, talking to people, depending on the subject, if it's healthcare or if it's public distribution system. Like in Karnataka, they were distributing rice, and my tribals don't eat rice. They're always living on ragi, and so I think it's a cultural invasion if you ask them to eat rice.
Right.
That's what the government gives, and once you start giving it free, people eat it. So we try to capture the voice of people to say ragi matters, and today the government of Karnataka actually has responded many years ago, and they started ragi as also an alternative. Cool. So things like that, where we try to get...
These are very small things, but actually creates a very
huge
big
difference. It makes a big difference. So people on the ground, for example, in again the state of Karnataka, they were distributing cycles. And people thought it was just a fashionable program they never saw it as an education intervention. They saw it as a tool for just populism. But our research showed us that the children, especially girls, actually use the cycle. Many of them actually come to school using the cycle. And the sense of awareness, the sense of ownership and the pride a rural child gets.
True.
Like it can cycle like a boy. And
Right.
it matters for a child in a village. It may not matter in a city.
True.
So those kind of small things which we actually capture those voices and sort of reassures the government also that these policies are working, this is not working, I can change.
Very good.
But so living with the people, like them, amongst them, an activist, an anti-corruption activist, and then fighting the tribal cause. I actually fought for them in the Human Rights Commission, trying to understand what human development was. And my concern was human development is not just toilets, houses, roads and airports. It's also something deeper. They were all manifestations. So I started trying to go deep, thought maybe I can learn it at Harvard, went to Kennedy School to learn policy, governance, leadership. And well, I thought they also don't have answers. Then came back and
because this is an evolving thing, right? It varies from country to country, from people to people. Of course, this will be different, right?
It is different, but more importantly, my understanding is people have a very economic narrative of poverty and development. So that is not really what development is. Human development is far deeper. And so my conclusion today is how do you invest on human and social capital? And they create economic consequences. That is what is India's civilization story. We've had the world's leading economy for 1600 years. You don't beat that just by accident. You beat it by intent, and something worked for us. And the last 300, 400 years, call it colonization, call it just destiny, whatever you call it, we lost it. Regaining it, that's what led me to look at Indic wisdom and say, what is it that we are doing right in India? A lot of things we are doing wrong also, and we have to discard it. Like Vivekananda said, there's a lot of trash that we acquired, we're thrown out of the window, but a lot of good which we have to grow and cultivate.
True.
And that led me to look at leadership and what, it's not the policy that matters, but I realized the policy maker and the leadership that he can generate, the way he can relate and the connectedness to people. And from that, if policy is born, policies are better. So that got me into policy leadership, and that took me to a different world of research and action, and that's where I am.
Wow. How is your experience working with Prime Minister Narendra Modi? What kind of a leader is he?
See, this book essentially captures a lot of things. Again, this book is not a hagiography.
Okay.
This is not a biography. So it's not about the person or the personality.
Agreed.
So a lot of, and today in the world we live in, the reality of polarization is also there. People have an opinion of everything. So it's an academic book.
Okay.
Just to
This is not
this is not just
biography.
Yeah. It's not written to just, it's not a sycophantic version of somebody trying to appreciate the Prime Minister. So that's something I want to clear.
Okay.
So,
but have you been critical about him in the book?
I would say this book is about only his leadership. So
Okay.
I have only analyzed it, the Prime Minister, and that's the Prime Minister. So there's there's clarity about that.
Okay.
And it's about Indic wisdom.
Okay.
So he is an exemplar, he is a case study. So my research into Indic knowledge led me to a point where I felt that there is no single person who could live and embody everything that I'm discovering. It's so vast. So I was talking to one of my mentors and spiritual guides, and he's passed away now, and this was maybe 15 years ago, where I not even contemplated writing anything like this. And saying, I'm doing so much of research, I don't know how to capture it together. And so that led to another book, The Leadership Lessons for Daily Living. It's about each chapter is a different person.
Okay.
While talking to him, he told me, he said, I don't know much about all these things, I'm just a monk. But I know that my brother monks in the Ramakrishna order talk about this man who was now the Chief Minister of Gujarat, who would come to our order to join as a monk. And they've been following his life, and they realize that he is possibly showing some of the things you're saying. And he said, I only have media reports and television reports to talk from, but maybe if you research his life, you'll get to know something.
Okay.
And he said, he's somewhere, he's a Chief Minister of a state, I'm living in a forest. I can't even imagine how I can do an academic work of this, so I think I'd let it go. I think fate willed otherwise. 3 years ago, I got appointed to the Capacity Building Commission of India, which is essentially a commission which is the heart and soul of what is called the Mission Karma Yogi, looking at putting together a future-ready bureaucracy. It's an idea conceived by the Prime Minister, who believes that citizen-centric governance should be his legacy, and how can you make the bureaucracy future-ready. After COVID, I think the realization that a nation has to be ready for all kinds of black swan events, and the bureaucracy has to deliver. So that is primarily, as a member HR, that's my role was essentially that, and that reports to the Prime Minister and his HR council. So it gave an opportunity to see him in action, watch him from close quarters. And I realized a lot of what I had done as research, here is a man who's actually living it. He's not formally trained in some research in a teaching institution like Harvard or other places, but he's acquired it on his own. And conversations led me to understand that he acquired it from his reading of Indian scriptures and different experiences he had from his last 50 years. So I had a research team put together, essentially 50 years of his life.
Okay.
I tried to research. From his 17th year onwards, 17th to 19th year, he was on his own journey around the country, and it was a very private space for him. So there's not much about that in the book.
Okay.
But post 19 to as 2024, till it got published, I've tried to look at his life from a very objective lens, from an academic lens, and see what does he manifest, how does he manifest it, and what are those traits which are emulatable. See, today we live in a world where you can get overwhelmed by charisma and personalities.
True.
And we believe that, I can't live like that. It's not for me. So we appreciate people, and the best thing that mankind does is put them on a pedestal and worship them. Whether it's Ambedkar or Mahatma Gandhi or all the great leaders of the past, whether it's Ramana Maharshi or Aurobindo, anybody you can name, we can't live their lives.
True.
Put them on a pedestal, say they are God, have a Jayanti, worship them one day, remember them, forget about it. But here, it does not really benefit mankind, the way I see it. Now, you can talk about Ahimsa and Satya that Gandhi told us, but if you and I don't practice it, we don't make the world a better place.
It does not make sense, true.
Yeah, it's just as good as just talking about it.
Right.
But I realized we need exemplars who will actually make it livable for us. And so a poor man from a small little village, young boy selling tea on a railway station, to being the Prime Minister, how is his journey possible?
And it's a big arc.
It's huge, right?
Huge arc.
And the barriers in politics are much more. Like if you, in the media world, if you're good, you grow. But it's not that.
The same is not the case in politics.
Right?
True.
It's a lot of barriers.
True.
How do you negotiate it? What kind of leadership you show? And what is constant in this 50 years? So I can rather say, when we talk of his leadership, what did I notice? There were several constants, which is not altered. It is expanded, but the essential DNA is not altered. So if you were to begin
Any example?
His the attitude to serve.
Okay.
It's not just a slogan when he says Sevak or Pradhan Sevak, because he actually believes his destiny is to serve this country. He originally thought that he could become a monk and serve himself and get moksha. When he was very disappointed when the Ramakrishna order said that, you know what, first they told him go get a degree, and then when he got the degree and came back, then they told him, Swami Atmasnanji will later become the head of the order itself. We told him, you are not destined to be a monk, you are destined for something else. And so he was very disappointed, so what is this all, and he just again traveled around the country, and then today where he is today, maybe that's destiny too. But he never lost focus on the fact I have to serve. So whether it's a pracharak, whether it's a chief minister or the prime minister, his intent to serve. And there's a very popular Vedic statement which Swami Vivekananda has given as the mandate of the Ramakrishna mission itself. He says, Atmano mokshartam jagat hitaya. He says it's not just about your personal salvation, it's not about your moksha, but your moksha should actually emerge from jagat's hita.
Oh.
The world should benefit. Sitting in the Himalayas and meditating in a cave is no big deal. But if you're not useful to society, what is that point? And so he actually has internalized it. So watching him, I realize he's internalized it. And this sense of purpose, it's expanded from just taking care of, as a pracharak, whatever he was doing, whether it's the Morbi tragedy when the dam burst, and the work he done, which I've written about it in the book, or the famine in Gujarat, where I've actually gone back and seen what happened and how he did it, to Chief Minister, to what he is today. And most of the decisions he takes, people only look at the schemes. If you say Vishwakarma, it's a scheme. And obviously there's a political machine which sells the scheme. But his idea of Vishwakarma and how it came from, comes from his connectedness, and that's something which is constant. Everything he does is extremely connected. And I was tracing, how does he connect? It's easy to say he's connected. He can connect to us when we go meet him, or he can connect to very senior cabinet colleagues, he can connect to global leaders, he can connect to citizens on the street. And when he goes, you don't get to 78% approval rating on your own, because you connect. And I was wondering, where does the connection come from? What is it? What's the magic? Is it just a hype, or is it really something that is there? And what I discovered was his deep this connection comes from a very deep communication concept.
Okay.
So we believe communication is all a Western given science, with the Shannon Weaver model of participatory communication. All of us read about it, and leadership we read, but even we presume that it's all Western world. Yes, the West has done a lot of research, but 3,000 years ago in India, in Bharata's Natya Shastra, there's a communication model beautifully described, and we don't even understand it. Most of us don't learn it.
Agreed, because it's Sanskrit, right?
It's Sanskrit, but also the fact that nobody told us about it.
True.
Right?
I'm listening to this for the first time, yeah.
When my research is the first time I heard about it, being so interested in this area. It's called Sadharanikaran.
Sadharanikaran.
That even the name,
like simplifying everything.
And the simplification there, the Western model is about no loss of meaning when I talk to you. So it doesn't matter who you are, who I am. I am the encoder of the communication, the message is passed on to you, you are the decoding it. Are you getting it the same way as I encoded it? That's all the West analyzes.
Right.
But, whereas in Sadharanikaran, all these concepts are there, and these are described much before the West discovered it. So it's actually original should be to Bharata Muni, who wrote the Natya Shastra. He says bhava matters, emotions matter. We have to connect at an emotional level, and he says that is Saharidayata.
Sorry?
Unification of hearts, or the alignment of our hearts.
Saharidayata.
Just imagine if that concept is understood, fragmentation, differentiation based on religion, gods, all this will disappear. We just connect. Saharidayata is the only thing that can lead to Sahakaryata. So there is an intense oneness of communication. Today, Otto Schwammer in MIT, he writes about theory U and different ways of listening.
Okay.
And he talks about a concept called the highest level of listening is co-generative listening. Where in that space, there's no you and me, we become one, and in that space, what gets generated is communication. That is exact description.
Is it possible?
It is. The exact description of bhava. Let's imagine you're watching a drama or a play. In that instant you become the hero, or you become the villain. You experience the oneness with
the emotions which the hero is going through, the villain
and
is
you
going
become
through.
that at that moment of time. In that instant, it could be a microsecond. In that microsecond, you actually experience that oneness. And in Indian scripture, it describes ekatvam, that sense of oneness. So the Advaitic listening, Otto Schwammer describes it as a space of co-generativeness, where we co-generate it together. And he describes it in their own cultural terms. India describes it in its own cultural terms. Both may be describing the same thing. But Otto Schwammer's work is celebrated, Bharata's Natya Shastra is forgotten. And he lives it. That's why he's so good at communication. People can appreciate it. And when he listens,
He's a fantastic orator. No doubt in the fact.
and his oration, where does it come from? I've described. What is the power of the word, the vak? How does it come from? And his listening. He's the only person I have seen who listens completely when you speak. There is zero distraction. His oneness is to be experienced. He is just 100% in the moment of time. Now, Eckhart Tolle describes the power of now. That's the power of now. And that's why he can remember every single conversation. I'm not exaggerating a word here. He could suddenly say, 3 साल के पहले मैं आपको ये बोला था, क्या हुआ? And you are struggling to say, 3 साल के पहले, what did he tell us? But he will tell you and jerk you and say, I was talking about this. कुछ हुआ? उसके बाद कुछ हुआ क्या? But what is seen as elephantine memory is not just the memory, it's that oneness in the moment of time.
Because you were so attentive around that
and
time.
no zero distraction, like I said. No, our minds wander. I'm talking to you, I'm thinking what should I say next. You might be thinking what question to ask next. We are not 100%. Truly, if we were to withdraw ourselves. The third thing I see is what we call sita pragnate, that equipoise.
Okay.
He's not disturbed. He can go back and tell farmers, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I'm taking back the farm law, but he's not disturbed. And I used to understand, where does this man, emotions come from? He's not agitated. We would have lost sleep saying, if you take back something that you pushed so much for, and that equanimity. I am certain, though I have not seen or met him post-elections, I am certain that the electoral results of the outside world writes about it and makes it a big issue. Whether it is 400 or 240, I don't think at a deep level he's going to be disturbed. It's just another number and he'll carry on with his seva and with his attitude. So his intent to serve the nation, and that's all is the primary cause, is something which is fascinating. And that I've seen through. And now today it's expanded maybe at a global level to say how do you make this world a better place. And so his Delhi declaration, and the final chapter I write in this book is about the dharma of legacy and the legacy of dharma. Dharma from the context of righteousness, not from a religious perspective.
Religious point of view.
And how does it matter? How does he is possibly the closest today in the world who can do something like that. And the last point I want to make is, end of the day, he is a political leader. And we can't forget it.
True.
What is unique about his political leadership that I have seen? I have compared a few global leaders here, most of them in the past. But if you look at today's leaders, 60-65% of the world today is going in for elections. Many of them are completed, like India, etc. Which means by the end of December, nearly more than half the world will see in elections. There's not a single global leader you can name who's found this beautiful balance between what we call in the policy world, balance between short-termism and long-termism.
Okay.
He has to worry about electoral politics, win elections, therefore give a lot of guarantees and free, subsidies with the political economies like that today.
True.
You have to win the election to be a statesman later.
Agreed.
Right? So you have to be in the short term, distribute the rice, distribute the houses, distribute all that. Take care of your farmers' welfare.
The subsidies, this, that.
You can't dismiss it away. At the same time, he's the only leader in the world who speaks about Amrit Kaal, 25-year strategic plan, vision for 2047. And he's drawn it out. It's not just slogans. A lot of things, he may not even be alive, he may not even be in politics at 2047, right? But concern that India should be the developed nation in the world, it should truly be where it should be, where it's capable of being. That balance between, in the scriptures, it's described as a very unique quality of Shreyas with prayers.
Shreyas with prayers.
Shreyas is the short term and Shreyas is the long term. And it's very rare that this can happen, is what the Indic wisdom talks. We are at a junction where we have a person who's actually been able to balance this out. In the policy world, the West describes it as combining short-termism with long-termism.
Okay.
And I have seen that's very powerful. And he has to worry about the economy, he has to make it inclusive, he has to worry about energy, he has to worry about people, he has to think of blue economy and green hydrogen. At the same time, he has to also think about tomorrow morning's person's house and his food and getting to vote and forming a government. This remarkable ability to be in the state of equilibrium despite these two kinds of conflicting pressures is something remarkable.
I have one question.
Please.
Sorry, you spoke a lot and now the gala is thirsty. What kind of research, how did you research about this book? Like, were there in-person interviews, were there press notes, releases, all newspaper cuttings?
A combination of several things.
Okay.
Like I had a team of, the advantage of being an academic is that at least you know the methods, you know how to go about and start your work. And then I had a team of excellent young researchers with me full time for 2 years. It was hard work. I would get up at 3 in the morning to put it all together to write, because I didn't want it to disturb my regular day job.
Agreed.
And we started off looking at, first we started with the immediacy that we have, where we can have a lot of data. So there's a lot of material on the public domain. So we captured all the material in the public domain. And public domain will always have a perspective, right? When
whosoever is reading it will come with the filter.
And if I'm an admirer, I write it on a perspective. If I'm a critic, I write it on a perspective. So we'll take both.
Okay.
Then we looked at, looking at his Mann Ki Baats. We looked at his tweets. And we said, what is it that's signifying it? At the end of the day, even if somebody else is actually putting the sentence together, he's telling them what to tweet. Or his speeches, his Independence Day speeches. And right from 2014 to where he speaks to the nation. And there's some continuity we can see. Then we went backwards. We said, okay, what else do we have any material in the public domain? Who are the people who...
Can I be skeptical about one thing?
Yeah, please.
So what I personally feel is all the tweets, all the speeches, all the Republic Day speeches, Independence Day speeches, political speeches, those are not actually written by him. Those are actually written by somebody in the team who's managing the speeches and everything. Do you get the real essence of the person out of those tweets and speeches and Mann Ki Baat? That is my fundamental question.
Yeah, see, what you say is true. There's always, as a Prime Minister...
Agreed. He has a lot of other things. He won't be writing the speeches.
But he approves everything.
Sure, of course.
His speech is not going to be written without his input.
And he's like a flamboyant Prime Minister. He can't just randomly go and read anything. Of course, he approves.
So that way, at least you know his line of thinking. Okay. You don't take his words, you see what we do in research is see patterns. You can't take an anecdote and either glorify him or criticize him, because that's not a pattern. If I have to say Balu is like this, I have to say a pattern in Balu, and it's easy to pick up patterns.
Okay.
Either my thoughts, my ideas, my actions, they all throw up patterns.
And you see patterns in tweets and Mann Ki Baat and...
There are patterns there too, but that we also, you might be aware of this. What we do is we don't just accept what we find out. We look for validations. And then once you validate whatever you find, you look for triangulations. You say, okay, now I can see pattern that's validating what he's doing, but can I triangulate it with something in the past? So then we went back to his Pracharak days. We went back to his Chief Minister days. So I met his cabinet colleagues. I met all his people whom I could meet from his, what I could go back to. I had a lot of conversations with him, one-to-one conversations where I asked him challenging questions, telling I don't understand this. What do you feel about it? And this is what people think you are. What do you think you are? And stuff like that, which, as an interviewer, though in a professional space, my job is to report to him, but he's under a fascinating leadership quality about him is separating role from self. The role of a person responding to my questions when I'm writing a book is he was never seeing himself as Prime Minister, and that gives you a lot more space and liberty to ask him questions. And he is very different. As a Prime Minister, he is different. As a politician, he is different. He knows, he plays roles and differentiates them perfectly to the context. And leadership is always in context. So in the context in which I used to ask him questions, I am trying to research and understand him. So I spoke to his cabinet colleagues, I spoke to senior officers who worked with him for 25 years. They're even still there. And so understand how does he do it? Can I see patterns? And went back to data. I spoke to monks. I spoke to people who go so it's a lot of work. And I listed the contributors where I've taken oral consent. They've listed in the book.
Okay.
And all the other research I saw patterns, and this is an academic book, so I know I'll be criticized by academicians if I don't do a thorough job. So my research notes itself is 50 pages.
Oh.
For a serious reader, the content is only 260 pages of the book, but the research notes is 50 pages. My glossary of terms that I've used, because everybody is not a Sanskrit expert, I am not, I can't even pretend. So I have to only depend on translations, I have to look at interpretations and commentaries. But when I use Sanskrit heavily in the book. So in the main part of the book, they have just written the popular way. But I have given a glossary which is 40 pages with the meaning.
40 pages of glossary?
Yeah, just explaining each word. So it's academic work, because what happens is I can be dismissed off as a psychopath. See, that's normal, that's how people would see it.
True.
So I wanted the academic nature of the book to be
remain intact.
So it's an intact leadership book, using an exemplar, a very powerful exemplar. The reason again is he's there, I can access, talk to him in flesh and blood, and a possibility for people to imitate. Now, if I work hard, if I show the same discipline, if I show the same determination, if I show the same focus and sense of purpose, maybe I can get there too.
And even if you don't want to become a Prime Minister, you can...
Anything in your life, whether it's corporate world, whether it's a social sector world.
Maybe arts, maybe anything.
Perfection can be in every single field of human endeavor. But that opportunity to say, I can get there and get hope. So my view is, if people read this book and understand it, if 1,000 leaders emerge in whichever space. So this is not written for public leaders alone. Though I've written about a public leader, the concepts are generic. And if you look at the endorsements, the foreword itself, the foreword is from Nitin Noria, who was the dean of the Harvard Business School. Now, he's not going to write something about a book just for sake of, no, I know Balu, I write. No, he in fact even writes that. So he was very clear, until I read the book and I understand it's worthy of my foreword, I will not write. And people who endorsed it, from Bill Gates to Anand Mahindra to N. Chandra, are all people who have their own intellectual integrities. They wouldn't compromise it. They all read the book and wrote it. That's what makes me feel happy, because it can apply to the corporate world, it can apply to the Indic way. Amish Tripathi is very Indic in his thinking.
Agreed.
He's also written it. So from Indic lens, he's seeing it. So I think people see from different lenses. Obviously, there will be criticisms because it's fair. And if it is the right criticism, that also adds to the body of knowledge.
Agreed. We can see like a season 2 of
exactly, right? And we can improve it.
Agreed. Makes sense. Thank you for being so modest and humble about it. No. Because very seldom you find authors who will say, if I get some criticism, I'll actually try to change the language and move into a further version of the book. Thank you for being honest about it. My last question to you is, since you have spoken about Indic wisdom, and what kind of parallels can we draw into our life, or what kind of wisdom can a normal common man, not just a Prime Minister, but a normal common man actually inculcates into his or her life, so that we can make this world a better place to live?
See, I would draw inspiration from his Delhi Declaration and say how we can connect. He mentioned in the Delhi Declaration, it's time for the world to look at the 4 Ps.
Okay, what are the 4 Ps?
He said people, planet, profits and peace. And if you look at the Indic concept, we talk about the 4 Purusharthas. And there we say, Artha, Kama, Moksha and Dharma. Now, Artha matters. You can't run a country without economy being strong. Now, if you want an inclusive economy, you can't have a hungry man on the street and talk of inclusive economy. You can't say he's a Hindu, he's a Muslim, he's a Christian. So hunger is different. We're all people, and we have to see everybody as people. And you can't say I don't want economy also. You need the economic models. All of us have to eat. We have to live our lives.
True.
So there it says you need the means of making the world a better place. And that's Artha.
Okay.
Karma is the desire to make it better, but karma not in a vulgar consumption-driven way, but in a responsible way. So responsible capitalism can come only when there is karma with Artha in a responsible dharma connecting the foundational thing. Dharma of righteousness is the foundation, is the cement, it holds all things together. But if you don't think that it's all this is to make myself better, evolve constantly. See, what is spirituality? Spirituality is not just saying that I'm going to go to heaven, whichever religion you belong to. It doesn't matter. Spirituality is making this world, the world that you're living in, a heaven for everybody.
True.
Right?
True.
And that is truly spirituality. It's about the pursuit of self-inquiry.
Agreed.
Asking, why am I sitting here? Why am I talking to you? Why did I write this book? Who am I? Is it going to help somebody in this cause? So seeing beyond the self, constantly worrying about the other, is the genesis of spirituality, and then you elevate yourself. So Artha, Kama, Moksha, Dharma, the Indic concepts that I talk about, in a lived way and articulating it in different ways what he is doing. And I see parallels there, and that is for everybody. It could be you, me, everybody. In Delhi, when I'm walking by, because coming from a civil society world to an NGO world, my colleagues make fun of me saying, you always think like an NGO. I don't know what does NGO mean, but still for me...
How does it matter?
I know, but I always say that I think like a human being, because being compassionate and humanitarian is not just civil society DNA.
True.
Every one of us are.
If they don't have, they should have.
You can't make the world a better place.
Yeah.
As simple as that. Take a walk in Delhi. It's something very unique to Delhi. Living in the forest, to be very honest, people think rural India and tribal India is poor. I don't think so. Now I'm not saying with a lot of conviction and responsibility. And if I have this time, I'll narrate a small story that happened.
Please.
For me, there was a young tribal boy. One day, I come from an area which is a cotton growing area, the Bandipur National Park area, where our hospital is. So people usually spray for the cotton a lot. And this fellow's father-in-law was praying and he had not covered his nose. There were no masks those days. I'm talking about the story 20 years ago. And he inhaled the poison and he had a poison. He was a victim of poison. So an organophosphorus compounds, you have a paralysis of your muscles and so your lungs stop breathing and so you died. It's a very painful death. So they brought him to the hospital and we didn't have those as a ventilator. So we said we have no choice but to refer him to Mysore. We know we can save his life. All we have to do is make sure he's breathing till the poison wears out. But we didn't have a ventilator. To go to Mysore, which is 80 kilometers away. So my doctor, I was not there in the hospital that day. My other colleagues were talking to the young boy and telling him, take your father-in-law, take him to Mysore, we'll put him in an ambulance and send, and he'll pull through. That boy was very, and Jain Kurbas are very shy, timid people. They are one of the most, I don't like to use the word backward, they are the most introverted tribe, I would call it that. So he was a little nervous. He said, he's not even gone beyond his village. You must see it in perspective. To go away to Mysore, and then the doctors assured him, don't worry, we'll take care. And so they all collected money from themselves. Those days 1,000 rupees was a big amount. Put him in an ambulance, sent him with the 1,000 rupees. He went to Mysore and everybody forgot because the hospital life goes on and next day is next another patient. A year later, this young boy comes and stands very sheepishly near my door. And I asked, what do you want? He says, he just comes in and says, I want to meet you. I said, what do you want? I said, sir, I have come to give you this back. And he puts 1,000 rupees in my hand. For a tribal, 1,000, even for me it is a big amount those days. For a tribal it is an extraordinary fortune. And I said, who asked the money back? Nobody even asked for it back. I was wondering, did my staff say something to him or something went wrong? He said, sir, no, nobody asked, but I think I should give it back. I said, why? He said, no, every time I went out for labor, I used to take some money and keep it aside. My father-in-law survived. And I realized that, how difficult it was for that day when doctors were going around taking 10 rupees from everybody, 15 rupees somebody else and putting it all together to make my life better. I thought another tribal coming to this hospital should not have that stress. So please use this money for that. I am not returning money. Oh. So in my book I write, being poor will, staying rich while being poor. Now that is real wealth. And I walk in Delhi and I see poverty very naked. People are sleeping in this heat under the flyovers and you don't know what to do because you're so helpless. There at least communities responded and we could do so much. Here I don't know, I feel many times, this is not me. Because you have to respond, and you have to respond in a sustainable way. It's not just an anecdotal way giving them, see when they're cold you can give them a blanket and that's nice, you need a blanket too. But how do you enable him?
That's not a long-term solution.
How do you enable him never to be in the situation that he's in? And I think a nation needs that inclusive economy. It needs artha to be applied in a compassionate way, in a magnanimous way. And the state is the principal agent. Nobody else can do it. And so if we can present that model to the world, an alternate economic model, the Prime Minister's call of life, where we take individual responsibility, balance the economy with ecology, and say, I am responsible. It's not just somebody else being responsible. Sure. When he says Team India for a new India, all of us are responsible for building this nation. So when he says Jan Bhagidari, for me it's music to my ears because it is speaking the language which I'm used to. Where citizens also take responsibility. We do it collectively. We hold the state accountable, but we don't absolve ourselves of responsibilities. We say we build the nation together. Where showing love, compassion, humanism is a collective responsibility. And there are no divisions for that. Individual beliefs are personal, but this is collective and we have to live that life. And that's my hope that when people read this book, that's a message they'll carry back.
I really hope the same. Let's make this world, let's make this country a better place to live, better than yesterday and less better than tomorrow. On that note, बहुत shukriya. Thank you very much for having this conversation. If you ever speak to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, do say that, just like say him very softly that please give an interview to me. That is the only way possible. I'm a very small podcaster, so I doubt that's going to happen. But I really hope so.
One never knows him, so.
True. Mr. Modi, if you're watching this, please give me an interview. I would love to host you on the podcast, and thank you very much, Dr. Balu, for having this conversation. It was lovely to know so many anecdotes, and this story was absolutely sweet and beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.